The truth has arrived.
For the purpose of sustaining our free republic, a free territory alliance for and by the people of the United States of America, in public and without reservation. In the course of human events, history warns whenever an oppressed people rise up and claim their freedom, a repeating cycle of learned helplessness will evolve. Wherein a free citizenry chooses to turn to comfort instead of service, the slow and subversive lie of tyranny will repeatedly rise and subvert the God-given natural laws of freedom. As a result, those free people who become entitled will face the inevitable choice between a free life or to wallow in the lie oppressed people tell themselves in the dead of night so as not to feel enslaved. For anyone that chooses a free life, so must they also shoulder the burden of the nation's well-being by participating in the sacrifice and service freedom demands, never forgetting that free people will inevitably be confronted through the ages by the lie of tyranny. As such, awareness and a steadfast guard of freedom must be deliberately maintained and passed from generation to generation, lest it be given away to the wolves of the world who lie in wait at our doorsteps and even within our borders. Therefore, let it be known by all who claim the right of citizenship of this nation that this awareness and steadfast guard of freedom we refer to is not simply a mindset, but a physical decision to stand at the ready and refuse capitulation to any other form of government not mentioned in the founding documents of the United States of America. What was written then in the nation's Declaration of Independence shall be repeated here in order to reestablish that which the founders understood: that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it. May these original standards of freedom once again stand as the unwavering foundation for this free territory alliance, to ensure a free and democratic nation that will not be given over to any tyrannical forms of government, regardless of how their authority was acquired, be it through trickery or vote. Let those that pledge to join this alliance, be they a common citizen or someone in a position of authority, honor this commitment of assistance and safe haven from those forces that desire power and authority for the purpose of dominion over freedom. May all who pledge here stand as one people, not as a collective ideology, but as a collection of free minds. And for the support of this alliance, we the people shall once again mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor, claiming the right of protection under the watchful eyes of God. Let it be known, free of malice or pressure, I swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America and the freedoms listed therein against all enemies, be they foreign or domestic. That I pledge not to capitulate to any other form of government beyond that which is defined in our nation's founding documents. I swear this in front of all the citizenry and God Himself, that I shall be held to this oath by the same. And as such, I shall sign my name on this alliance, that it may be known I made this pledge and commitment, which I intend to uphold. So help me God. I'm Jonathan Gilliam, and this is The Experts. Thanks for joining me. A little bit different of an intro there, but that was the reading of the Free Territory Alliance document that you can see at www.freeterritoryalliance.com. And basically, as I explained in yesterday's show, this is a way for us to get everybody on the same page, just like you're going to hear today from Sheriff Chad Bianco, who is the sheriff and coroner and public administrator of Riverside County, California. What you're going to hear today is a man who took an oath to support and defend the Constitution, not just a federal oath, but also a state oath, to protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And you're going to hear in this conversation, it's an amazing discussion about the reality of where we have come from and where we are now, and how close, or really it's not close, we're in socialism, but how much deeper this can go and how fast it could be. One of the most interesting things about this conversation that you're going to hear is that the sheriff brings up Cubans that come to America and how important their voice is and what they've seen. And it's very interesting because I have been saying that on this show for so long now, that the president really missed an opportunity by utilizing the Cubans and letting them explain to people the reality of what happened to them and what they've seen and what's happening and occurring here. Cubans will tell you it's a nightmare what's happening. You know, my buddy Drago that I talk about, who is from Poland, he's the same way. He feels terrified by what's happening in this country. Now, Sheriff Bianco is very interesting because he's also the coroner. Coroner's a very powerful position. I know when I was in Illinois, which I'm going to get the sheriff's take on this, that the coroner is the only person that can fire the sheriff, which is obviously a political, somebody figured that out along the way. Illinois is the most corrupt political place I've ever seen in my life. But the sheriff in Riverside County is also the coroner, the sheriff, the coroner, and the public administrator. And he's been there since November of 2018, but he's had 25 years in law enforcement at the Riverside County Sheriff's Department. So he's not new to anything that's happening here. And he, as the sheriff, he serves as the chief law enforcement officer of Riverside County. Now, he commands the second largest sheriff's department in the state of California, and one of the largest, most progressive law enforcement agencies in the nation, supervising, get this, okay, more than 3,600. That's 3,600 personnel. You know, most police departments around the country don't exceed 200. And most of the small towns that you see nowadays may not have any more than 10 police officers there. Sheriff Bianco is in charge of over 3,600 personnel. That is an amazingly large police department. Now, New York City has, they say 40,000. The reality is that they have screwed that number up because they've included now ticket takers and meter maids and schools, not even school officers anymore, just people who drive around they look like NYPD cars, but they're all incorporated in the number. So it used to be about 40,000 sworn police officers. Now it's in the 30s now. But Sheriff Bianco, he entered the Riverside County Sheriff's Department December 31st of 1993. Now, this show is called The Experts because we like to turn to people who have this type of expertise. And he is also somebody who is standing up against the governor and really setting the example for somebody who understands the reality of what's going on and this game that's being played on the American people. Not that COVID's not real, but the fact that it's being used politically to basically oppress the population of this nation, not just in California. The sheriff sees that, and he is somebody who's taken a stand against that, and I think it's amazing. And there's a lot more sheriffs out there than people realize that are doing this, and we're going to talk about how important the sheriff actually is and how powerful the sheriff actually is. But enough about me talking about him. Let's bring him in. So this is my first Zoom meeting ever.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I've been on them, but I've never hosted one before, so I really have no clue what I'm doing. I do the podcast every day, but the sound on Zoom is incredible.
Good. Well, that's good. Yeah. I've never hosted one either, so I just get on and participate. And
yeah, but you're the sheriff. Other people do that for you.
That's right.
I'm just a measly peon. So listen, I've already started the recording, and this isn't going to be video at all. It's just audio.
Okay.
So I will edit this together. If there's something in there that you don't want, you just say, don't put that in there, and I'll go back as I go back through and listen to it. And we can talk, I would say anywhere between 5 and 30 minutes, whatever you want. I won't keep you on here all night.
Very good.
So let's just first of all, let me just point out the fact that we live in different worlds. I lived in Altadena and Pasadena and Glendora for a while. My sister lived in Riverside, and I used to go to a go-kart track out in Riverside all the time. That was it was crazy. You could go as fast as you want to go. I don't know if it's still, probably not still there, but
it is not there.
It was crazy. I don't know. And other people knew about that go-kart track, but so I went to Pasadena City College, and but I'm originally from Arkansas. And but now I live on Long Island, and I just got through digging cars out that were buried in snow. So that's how different the world is that we live in right now. So
yeah,
but similar worlds in the fact that we are both being suppressed or oppressed by governors that are trying to basically they're trying to suppress any type of freedoms that they can. At least that's what we see it as. And I think the reason I saw you on the news, and I heard what you had to say, and it just reflected throughout the entire country of people who understand what's going on. And so the reason why I wanted to reach out to you, Sheriff, is that I have to get somebody's take that is in a position such as yourself that's under this oppression, and so that they can tell the people the reality about how dangerous these governors and mayors are, and because we always think of tyrannical leaders as being presidents or dictators, but I don't think people realize how dangerous these people are at the local level.
Mm-hmm. I think you're absolutely right. So, I think a lot of our problem as a society, as Americans, is we're naive to think that anything that happens in other countries could ever happen here. But yet, slowly over time, it's our really American way of life. Our freedoms are being eroded, and everyone just thinks, well, that can't happen here. That can't happen here. Well, it can happen here if we allow it. And if you just turn a blind eye and you're just, naive to say that, well, it's not going to happen here, then it is. And I think that the people that are trying to do that, to take away our freedoms, to erode those away, are taking advantage of good people that believe that everyone thinks like they believe, and that that right is always right, and wrong will never win. And when you think like that, you get taken advantage of.
Right. Now, you've been in law enforcement, and in particular, because I was looking at your resume here, you've been in since really 1993.
Yes.
In law enforcement, and it's a completely different world from then to now. I've been a cop. I was in the FBI. I was in the SEAL team. So I've done all these different things that where we swear an oath. I've sworn oaths multiple times to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And in particular, when we look at it, people are always saying, thank you for your service. But the reality is I served the Constitution and the rights therein so that the people can be free. And when you came into this venture, like most people do, and you were young and you had this urge to serve. What is the difference now with what you were facing then? You had this calling, you came in, and then now what you're facing when it comes to the leadership above you. How has that changed you? How is that? Well, let me ask this question. How has that changed overall? The people that you came in and served under, and now that you're actually a boss, but you still have these people over you, how much has that changed in service?
Well, the aspect of how I fit in that's what certainly has changed. I think my mentality, I don't think has the job that we do, I don't think has, but what the position that I got to I got to this position for a completely different reason why, or a different reason that other people may seek out this position. And I sought this out almost in a bubble just to make my department better. I knew that I had to make my department better. The only way that's possible on a broad scale is if you're the person responsible for that department. But what I found out once I got there, there's a much bigger world surrounding sheriffs than just running this agency. And when you look at it, I swore an oath to the Constitution. I swore it to both the federal and the state constitutions. And if you just blindly go up there and you just it's just a formality to you, you lose the gravity of what you just did. And it's almost just a formality. It's not a reality of what you just did. And then what I quickly realized and it took maybe 6 months, 9 months, when I realized what a powerful position and the power that I wield as a sheriff politically, not just how I manage the department and how I deploy our men and women and what we want to fight in a certain community, but politically, in this county of 2.5 million, I'm the most powerful politician in this county. And when you take our sheriffs as a whole, we are the most powerful entity in the state of California. We wield the most political power. We're voted on, the governor, is voted on by the same amount of people or more. Each county, this entire state votes for him. But in my county, I'm more powerful in my county than the governor is. And I don't have a boss. That's the beauty of a sheriff is my boss is the people of this county. And if I don't do what they put me in here for, which is make public safety better, then they're going to vote me out. And my decisions are based on what's best for Riverside County rather than what's best for a political, whether it's a political ideology or the political whims of a board of supervisors or a city council member or a city manager. Those things don't matter to me. No one has any, what's the word I'm looking for? They have nothing to hold over me that makes me that makes me have to be emboldened to them or beholden to them. And I think it's a huge responsibility. And in this environment where we're talking about, we really are, you have to really see that we are being, you mentioned it earlier, the two governors, they're very dictatorial. You do what I say. Both of them are you do what I say, not as I do, because they run their lives like they're immune to everything. Right. But yet, integrity wise, they're telling you that you can't do the same things they're doing. They also don't tell the people that we want you to be your best and we trust you and we respect you and your rights and the fact that you have your own brain. They don't do that. They literally treat people like a 5-year-old. Right. And it is the mentality of you are not capable of running your life. The government will run it for you. That seriously is the mentality that they're pushing onto us with that dictatorial attitude, with that. Both of them, when you look at them and you listen to them, they're very, very similar in that the disregard that they have for the individual is just amazing. They don't believe that. They think we're all idiots. And they think that none of us have brains and none of us have reasoning ability and none of us are going to remember what they said yesterday. Right. And we're just going to blindly do what we're told. And that is the only reason that this country is obviously the greatest country in the world, because people have fought against that. They've fought against it with our military, keeping it out of this country and even keeping it out of other countries. And then, unfortunately, for a law enforcement perspective, being a cop, I mean, in the military, if you're swearing an oath to defend this country from all enemies, foreign and domestic,
right,
I mean, you can grab a hold of that because we have many enemies out there. In law enforcement, you think of that on the outside that, we would defend the country just like the military if something ever happened and they brought it onto our soil. But this right now is we may be defending our people from our own government. So in these situations,
let me say that what you just brought up is something I talk about a lot. When I was in the military, or even when I was in the FBI, who is the foreign, or who the enemy is determined by politicians. Even in the FBI, even in the military. I mean, I may have been in this elite group of warriors in the SEAL teams, but we don't determine who the enemy is. Politicians do, and I think that's what separates a true sheriff. I mean, there's a lot of sheriffs around the country that are just politicians, that's for sure. But true sheriffs who understand what you understand, you grasp who the enemy is. And this is what's very interesting, is that you, as the sheriff, not guided by politicians, you have your own judgment based on your oath and the Constitution of who the enemy is. And it's interesting who you see as the enemy. You see that right now, and I don't want to speak for you, but I can tell by your actions the same way that I feel that the enemy is these megalomaniac leaders that are at all levels really of politics, but they are oppressing the people, something like you would have seen back in the early 1900s. And so it's very interesting when you say that, because I'm not listening to one of the politicians that would have told me who to go to war with in the military FBI, because they would never say that these politicians are the enemy. They would never say that. They would never say people from a political party are ideologically aligned with oppression. They would never say that. But when I talk to somebody like yourself, who's in a position of authority, who's not under the stranglehold of these politicians, you identify the same thing that the people identify as the enemy.
Right. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think that I have to tell people this all the time, because there are people that think I'm the enemy here, that they think that I'm killing people because I'm not enforcing the governor's order, and that I should just obey my superiors. And I throw it out all the time. It's like, well, that's great, but what if the governor just decided tomorrow that I just need to go arrest all Hispanics, or that I need to go arrest all blacks, and anybody of African American descent is more likely to die by this, and you're going to waste our taxpayer dollars, so we're going to go round you up and arrest you. There is no way in hell I would ever do that. And
they could very well do that, because they literally have done that, like, let's say, with churches. They've done that. They've specifically targeted those for no reason, and then let everybody go to Costco.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you look at both sides, I mean, if you run your life by emotion and you trust everything you see on one news channel, and that's all you believe is one news channel, then shame on you, because you're supposed to make your best judgment call. And in law enforcement, you can do that, because, I mean, that's our job. Is we don't just listen to one person. And, there's something that we say all the time, that the truth is always in the middle. There's this person's story side, and there's another person's story side. And more than likely, either one or both are lying, or their perception is just different. So the actual truth is somewhere in the middle.
Right. And
if you don't try and get both sides, you can never find the truth, which may be in the middle. And when you look at that, and even you go through this election, there was absolutely no secret that the Democrat Party, and I don't want to make this about politics, because this isn't Republican and Democrat, but the Democrat Party made it very obvious that they believe that socialism is the way to go.
Right. And
so now I have to sit and look at that. Well, obviously, politically, I do not believe that. I think that we are. Everybody knows we're the greatest country in the world, and all of these people from socialist countries are trying to come to our country because theirs is so oppressive and theirs is wrong, and that's why they come here. And yet we have a political subdivision, maybe a sect of the political spectrum that believes that we need to be socialist. And now I have to look at that oath that I swore and say, wait a minute, if we're going to be socialist, that flies in the face of my Constitution. That is not what our Constitution says our government should be and
right.
what our country should be. And so then it has to be, well, anybody that's going towards socialism now, you've just identified yourself as the enemy, because you are now an enemy of the United States of America because you want to change the country. We're not supposed to be changing the country. We're the greatest country in the world. That's not saying that we could make some things better. We can always make the day better. When you should go to sleep making that day better than when you woke up. Right. And if everybody did that, I mean, we'd have a utopia possibly, but when you sit and look at my government in California, we are run by a supermajority of a Democrat legislature and a Democrat governor. That public safety is not important anymore. Its control is important. Mm-hmm. They want one common law enforcement. They don't want individual police departments. They despise individual sheriffs because I can make up my own mind. I can make my own decisions. I'm not being controlled by a political entity. So they despise us. They're trying to change us now. They're trying to get us appointed instead of elected. And if that happens, then we're beholden to that governor, that person, instead of the Constitution. Right. So they're trying to change that. They're trying to make it different in our country. So obviously, we're now making that oath that I took even that much more important. And when you look at, you kind of mentioned it about right now they're telling us which stores we can go to, where we can eat, which stores have to close, the amazing thing in this country was formed in most part for religious freedom. I mean, we fled another country for religious freedom, or our people did. The people that formed the U.S., that made the U.S., they came here for religious freedoms. Right. And our Constitution and this country was built on the premise that not only are we all equal, but religion that's what makes us free is our morals, our values, our religious freedoms, and they took that away from us this year. I mean, for the first time in the history of our country, they told us we couldn't attend church services. And regardless of whether or not you're a religious person, that should scare the hell out of you, because that's one of our, if you want to talk about the Constitution, that is number one.
So, yes, and exactly. And so what's interesting, like in Vegas, for instance, you could only have 50 people in a church, but the casinos could have 50% of the people, which means they could have thousands in there, but yet a church could only have 50 people in it, right? And then I don't know where this 10 people thing came up with at all. And I know that we don't want to, from an investigative standpoint, we should look at this from an investigative standpoint instead of a political standpoint. You look at it from a political standpoint, people are going to say, well, you're conservative, so you're backing the Republicans. I look at things from a realistic investigative standpoint. And when I look at where the destruction is, where the majority of death has happened, where the most oppression has happened, the totality of the circumstances points to the Democrat Party and to Republicans who have appeased them. And so where the elderly people have died, and that's really where you have the most numbers, Democrat governors are in charge, and they put the elderly sick that have COVID into the elderly homes, and that inflated the numbers dramatically. Now they're doing it again, which makes no sense in some places. Where the churches are oppressed, that is in Democrat-led states. My mom lives in Arkansas. There were some people who came down with COVID in her church, so they just had church. You can come there if you want, but if you're elderly, you should probably stay home, and they'll do it by video. They made the decision themselves. They weren't oppressed to do that.
Self-responsibility.
Yeah, and so, when we look at this and we look at, again, I've been preaching on this on the podcast, the totality of the circumstances. What does the evidence tell you? The evidence tells you that there is a group of people in leadership positions around this country that are in league together, and they're conspiring together to do the same thing in different states, because they do to the T on the same days. They'll have the same press conferences, have the same rules. They will start crucifying people in the same way. Out in LA, you had where they were going to turn off electricity and stuff. All of a sudden it started to happen in New York. They come up with these things, and it is solely based in the Democrat Party, which is solely based in socialism. And so the question I have, let me just ask you this question real quick. The question I have for you is that people don't realize is, what is a sheriff, and how do you stand up against this? Because most people don't understand that authority that a sheriff has. They just think you're another police department and you're in charge of the jails, or in Arkansas where I used to live, that, they have patrols, but they just look at it as another police department. That's it.
They do. And one of the things over this, and I will say this, I mean, obviously you can't please everybody. And I have gotten my share of negative comments and emails and mailings here and calls. But my dispatchers and my administrative office, they keep track. They keep track of who's calling and whether they're positive or negative. And it's about a 10% negative. So 90% of the people that are calling in are supportive of what I'm doing. So what is a sheriff? Some of the people that call and complain, they call and tell me how shame on me for not obeying my superiors. And those people have absolutely no idea what the sheriff is. I don't have a superior. I am the final say of law enforcement in the county of Riverside. And it's like that in any county across our country, because all of us sheriffs, there are two organizations, the National Sheriff's Association and then major county sheriffs. The major counties is counties that only have over 500 sworn officers. We've got 3,000. And then the rest of some sheriff's departments only have 10. Some have 5. Right. Some are the sheriff and a deputy. Some are just the sheriff. But all of those sheriffs are elected by the people, and they don't have a boss. And it's the only thing I'm dependent upon for our board of supervisors is they control the money. They control how much money I have, but they don't control how I spend it. And so the law enforcement in Riverside County is based on what I believe should happen and where I believe our emphasis should be, and what should be the important things we go after, whether it be drugs or gangs or homeless, or it could be anything. I mean, depending on what your circumstance is in your community, your quality of life issue is different. And that is all I combat. I don't combat what a political board combats. We have one city in our county. It's a decent sized police department. They've got probably about 150 officers in that department, and their board and their county council, or their board and their city manager, they're predominantly a liberal socialist body. Right. And that police officer, that police chief, is being forced to do what they want politically. And I'm not, that doesn't affect me at all. Politics don't go into my train of thought at all. One of the things you said about, making it a Republican Democrat thing, I don't make any decision based on that. And I get labeled, they say, oh, you're just a Republican. That's why you're doing it. The only reason you're doing this is you're doing it politically because you're a Republican. Mm-hmm. Well, how do you know? I mean, just because of that, right. In reality, cops make decisions in different than everybody else. And the meetings that I sat in these steering committees on how we were going to handle COVID in our county, and everybody is just out of their mind emotionally. And I mean, sometimes my wife says I have no emotions, but it's really when I have to come down to a decision making ability and the decision-making process, you can't put emotion in there. You have to put nothing but fact and reason and common sense. All of those things have to come into play. And so this has nothing to do with a Democrat doing something and a Republican doing something. It's what are the facts and what do the facts tell you? And then how am I going to base my decision on that? So when I have to make this decision to close the county or not, or to arrest these business owners or not, or arrest someone for going out of their house, or arrest someone for not wearing a mask, I'm not doing it because someone tells me to do it. Mm-hmm. And some people think that I should. And I have to look at it and say, well, wait a minute. That person out of 2.5 million people, we have 160 in intensive care. That one person in intensive care, if I go arrest this other person down the street, would that have prevented that person from being in intensive care? And the answer is no. If you wear a mask, doesn't determine whether or not someone else gets sick and goes in intensive care. So how can I justify shutting down a business when there's no factual basis that that's going to help anything?
Right.
There's no evidence. There's no, they keep telling you if someone keeps pushing something on you as an investigator, you don't believe it just because they're telling you. You have to verify whether it's true. So right. When someone keeps saying, well, the science is saying this, that drives me nuts. The science, the science, the science, the science. There is not one bit of science that they will show you that points to that. But they think that it's almost like a psychology thing or a reverse psychology
That's
thing.
What it
where
is.
If they say it enough, I mean, you don't want to be that person that says, well, I guess I just don't know the science, or I don't believe the science. I don't want to be the person that doesn't believe science. Right. So they're saying it enough, so it must be true.
Look at the hospitals. In an environment that's as close to sterile as you can get, they only wear those masks for 4 hours at the most, and then they're changing those masks. And if a nurse or a doctor has fever and is extremely sick, they're probably not going to be working on anybody that's critically ill. So they're not just looking at in a hospital setting before COVID. They weren't just looking at masks as the end all be all to stop all illnesses. That's not the case. Right. What's interesting, when I went through SEAL training, after I got to the team, I went through Ranger School. And when I got to Ranger School, because we do exchanges with the Army, and right. So I got to go through that. And the interesting thing when I was there was where everybody else was freaking out because the instructors were screaming and hollering at them, I was able to see through that because I'd been screamed at for over a year now, and I'd gone through the toughest military training in the world. So when they were yelling, what I heard was only what I needed to hear. It was yell, yell, yell. I need you to tie this string up there and haul this antenna up there and make it work. Yell, yell, yell. Everybody else would get freaked out and nervous. I would hear the instruction, and then I would get everybody together and we would do what we were instructed to do. What we see now is all these governors and these doctors and these people coming out that have these agendas, and they yell, 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 and the people don't see it. But the reality of what's happening, the game that's being played. But for guys like yourself, myself, other law enforcement officers, certain investigators, I've had people call me from the FBI telling me, saying, please tell me I'm not crazy, because what I'm seeing here is voter fraud. I'm seeing things going on with these different governors that just seems megalomaniac. Please tell me I'm not crazy. I'm like, no, you're not crazy. You're just still working for the government. So you're still hearing the chatter. I don't. And I'm on the outside now. And I think for a sheriff or for a law enforcement officer that isn't under one of those people, it's so much clearer. You can see through that chatter. And the rest of the people, they just get inundated by this stuff on a daily basis to the point where they just are, in 9 months, they've turned into puppets.
Yeah. It's interesting that you put it like that. And while I'm listening to you, it's like, well, that's exactly the position that I'm at. And all over this time, I've always said that, you've got an emotional response to this, and mine is not emotional. But how you just said it, I'm not in their world anymore. We're letting our supposedly health officials that are government health officials, not doctors. When you go out to doctors and you ask the actual doctors, right. You get a mixed bag of, some doctors are saying, this is a a life-ending, deal, and oh my gosh, the world is falling. But then other doctors are saying, this is just a virus, and as long as you don't have any other, major issues with you, you'll be fine. You'll get over it. You may be sick for a while. And so when you have that, you've got different. A doctor is not beholden to that government. All of our health officials are beholden to the government. So our health officials they're in the same environment, being told that day after day after day after day, and they don't get to see anything else. Where I'm only going in for that meeting 1 hour a day, and then I'm going back out into the world and I'm getting other aspects and other opinions and other points of view that they're not getting. So I'm glad you said that, because that's something I haven't looked at it like that before, and I think you're exactly right.
I also see, for instance, with a law enforcement officer, we put some cops work in the 7-5 precinct in New York. It's the worst of the worst, or downtown Chicago, or there's places in Riverside County. I know because I lived out there. There's places where it's extremely dangerous, and if you put cops in there day after day after day, they developed certain ideas about that community. Well, the community develops certain ideas about the cops as well, none of which are real, but they are 100% responsive. You go into this area, certain group of people live there. That's who you deal with day in and day out. And if you're not careful, you will start to believe that everybody of that race, for instance, or everybody will think that every cop, for instance, is bad. And that is the crazy thing about this, is that doctors that are under the oppression of these individuals, or that have signed themselves off to following politics and the news, they, even though they're in it day in and day out, they start to believe that all the people that are coming in there are because people didn't follow the guidelines, or because it's out of control, that it's all of a sudden the virus is out of control. And they don't look and see what you all see, which is a whole population walking around healthy.
Yeah, exactly. And, the whole thing that we're dealing with masks, I mean, the masks are being pushed so much. Now, I believe that there is a chance that a mask may help. But you got to remember that in the very beginning of this, for the first 2 weeks, they told you don't wear a mask. Masks aren't going to help against this virus. It's impossible. It's too small. It travels in and out of that mask like it isn't even there. And then 2 weeks later, they tell you it's mandatory that everybody wears a mask. And so then you start looking at these different things. Well, that may not be true. And then if it were true, wouldn't that mean that everyone that's wearing a mask shouldn't be getting COVID?
Right.
But that isn't the case.
Wouldn't you think that every cop every day would be getting COVID, because you guys are out there interacting, and paramedics? I mean, you guys should be dropping dead like flies.
We should. So, and all of the homeless people. I mean, I run the coroner's bureau in the county. So any death, especially something with a homeless person that's considered an unattended death, we're the ones handling that. We've got to take care of funerals. We got to take care of their body and everything else. It's not happening. So why are they not dropping like flies? Because if it's as horrible as they say it is, and they can't get treatment, and nothing's going to happen, they'd be dead all over the place. Even as much as cops, as much as we tell them to wear your masks, there are certain circumstances where it's not practical to have a mask on when you're trying to get verbal compliance from someone speaking behind a mask where they don't even know what you're saying, or you're mumbling and everything else. You need to be perfectly clear of what you're saying. So we know that the deputies aren't wearing masks all the time. Why isn't my entire 4,000 member department, why haven't they gotten COVID already? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So that emotional, this thing about how horrible it is, and everybody's going to be dying from it, and the hospital's overrun just because of COVID. Well, then as a cop, I say, okay, well, when COVID wasn't here, what did the numbers look like? And then I found out that 2 years ago, our county ICU beds were operating at over 100% capacity. Well, wait a minute. How can that be? Because you're telling me that the only reason it is because of COVID and because I haven't shut down businesses.
Right.
And so when those things just don't make sense, then now I have to look at that order and say, well, wait a minute, where is this order coming from? Is it coming from a control perspective of a government overreach perspective, or is it really about helping someone? And then really early on in this particular virus, as a cop, you're looking for a solution, you're looking for an answer, and you're looking for a way to fix it. So if you have a suspect out there that is barricaded, you have to figure out how you're going to get them. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of the mentality that we have. Take in all the information. How are you going to solve it? And then solve it.
Listen, what you just said right there, Sheriff, is 100% what they are not doing. I have not heard one governor that has this crisis in their, one of the major COVID crisis, quote unquote, in their state. I have not heard one of them say what you just said, where you sit back and you evaluate the crisis and you come to a realistic, effective solution. It's uniformed bad decisions. Well, I shouldn't even say bad decisions. It's uniformed decisions for the purpose of control. That's all I see.
I believe so too. And this is the way I look at it. This led to that, the video that I made. There were many, many, many things that went into it, but this is something that formed my opinion and that formed my train of thought. I've been involved in this with our county government since the very beginning. For us, it was February, because we had the first plane come from China and land at a military base here in Moreno Valley, which is, just a couple of miles from where I am right now. And that was the first identified plane of COVID into the country. And so we've been managing this or preparing for this since then. And so it's not like I'm coming in at the end. I've been here from the beginning. And from the beginning, we have said, and it's been pushed on us, that we have the spring. It's going to happen in spring. It'll die off, but be careful, because in the fall and the winter, it's coming back again, and it's going to be worse. So then I sit back and say, okay, well, what did we do in that 9 months to make sure that we were taken care of right now? We know that that predominantly the people dying are 65 plus with health issues. Did we identify those people, and did we do something to make sure that they were taken care of, that they were staying home, and that we as a society were taking care of them so they wouldn't have to come out of their house? We did none of that. We knew that we've been saying it all along, that this is about making sure that our hospitals were not overwhelmed. Did we do anything from March until December to make sure that our ICU beds were going to be able to handle a major surge? And the answer is no. And why not? We should have identified that. If we were really trying to come up with a solution and a fix for this, we would have identified the problem, which is elderly, unhealthy, pre-existing, overweight, high blood pressure, cancer treatments, those type of people. And we would have been targeting them to tell them, you need to shelter, you need to make arrangements to be taken care of. As a government, all of this money that we're spending, we could have directed it, targeted at those people to make sure they were safe. And the rest of our businesses, the rest of our residents would not have been severely impacted the way it's been, based on a complete over control of our government.
And the other thing is the intubating. Intubating is a death sentence in most cases, yet they are still throwing people on intubation, full well knowing. I mean, I've had doctors say that if we intubate them, they're not going to make it. They're probably not going to make it. Well, then why aren't we've had 9 months. Why have you come up with something else? I mean, there are some things they're putting them on their stomach versus on their back. They're using CPAP machines, but they're still doing this. And also they're skewing the numbers where they say that hospitalizations are up. That is such a vague statistic that I don't know what that means. It's winter. People fall more. People have the flu. What does that mean? And we see these statistics all the time in the news, and people just say, oh, wow, hospitals are at maximum capacity. They don't know why.
Right.
They don't know what the regular numbers are.
Yes, our county hospital, we're unique because we have a very, very large county hospital. So I deal with the administrators there all the time. And I was speaking with her, about the real numbers of our ICUs and the real numbers that deal with COVID and patients and everything else. And she said, we would be fine if the people that you're dealing with, if your people, she calls them my people, all the criminals out there. Right. She said, if they would quit shooting each other, we would be fine. We would be able to manage this.
Isn't that interesting?
Those things all keep happening, And especially you're locking everybody down. There's no secret that crime is up. Crime is skyrocketing right now, especially with assaults and murders. And so with that, they're all in our hospitals. They don't, just because you get shot doesn't mean you die, but it certainly means you have a serious care need that hospital is going to have to take care of. And so you have, we've got 650 ICU beds. 160 of them are filled with COVID. Why aren't we caring about the other 500?
Yeah.
Because there's the problem, not the COVID.
Right. And we don't even know, like, all these people stay home now. They don't touch anything outside. So is their immune system crashing? Are they going to get more sick if they get the flu this year? We don't know anything. And then when it comes to effective thinking, I have heard no one say anything about elderly clinics, about why don't we do a rotation where the people that work there stay there for 2 weeks and then they rotate out. They don't do, these elderly clinics are about the most criminal thing I've ever seen in my life. They're not rehab clinics. It's terrible. And most of the people that work there, and I can say this because I've seen a ton of these out here, Voices for Seniors is a group of women out here, mostly women in New York, who they've all lost people in these elderly clinics. And they have shown me the light when it comes to all these clinics. These are people from across the board, multiple clinics that have lost 40, 70 people dying because they have no clean rooms. They have no staff system where they rotate in and out. And then on the other hand, they're losing all these people because they're just dying because they haven't seen anybody in 9 months. And these governors they have about as much emotion about this as in Germany when they were, putting people in concentration camps. They don't even, in fact, I would have to say one thing that really, that the governor here in New York stands out is that this weirdo actually wrote a book saying he was successful, then got an Emmy Award, and then just got some other Kennedy Award. The psychosis that is being shown here, not only by him but by Newsom and the mayor in L.A. You have the New Jersey governor. These people where they turn around and they're out eating with no mask on. They're not following their own guidelines, and yet they turn around and will totally crucify people. I've just never seen anything like this, and there's absolutely no effective thinking, no solutions whatsoever for any of this stuff.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And why is no one asking about that? And are they? And it's just being censored. I mean, it's amazing to me that we put so much of our lives into social media accounts, where everything is about Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, and those entities are now censoring information that we get.
They'll fact check you and tell you whether you're right or not. And it's some kid who's 20 something years old sitting behind a computer, not fact checking, but twisting the story.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
On Facebook, I guarantee you, if we took 3 of our comments that we've made here today and put them up there, with a video of you, it would get fact checked and would get blocked.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. We had one of our posts. It wasn't from us. The mother showed us, but her son. It was a picture of her son giving a gift to a deputy, and it was he's handing the picture of him giving it to the deputy, and they were masked up. It was recent, and that picture, she posted that picture, and the picture was deleted because it contained offensive material. And it was, she was livid. And it's like, who made that decision? You talk about censoring of information and the controlling of information and the guiding of an agenda. I mean, that is just, people should honestly be worried about it. And I don't know if it's an apathy thing, if we're so apathetic that we don't care, we're not looking into it. And, you put your blinders on and it didn't specifically affect my life today, so I don't care about it. I think that's getting us into the point where we're at. I hope somehow it's able to change, because if you look at it from an objective standpoint and you look at both sides, there is a serious misinformation agenda that is being pushed on us.
Right.
And I mean, honestly, it should scare everyone. And, we're even finding right now, I learned today that even in our state, as whacked out politically as it is, we're a super majority of Democrats, but now they're having infighting because all of them are not socialists. And even the Democrats are saying, well, wait a minute, that now you're completely changing our country to something else. And maybe we aren't blindly going to follow that. So maybe something in with COVID and the push where I believe there are a lot of things that I think when you never let a tragedy go by, you
Right.
can use it for something. And I think maybe that COVID was that tragedy, and they used it to affect an election. They used it to affect maybe the changing of our country from our democratic republic to a socialistic environment. And it's when are we going to stand up to it? And back to the sheriff perspective and my perspective on this, I'm certainly not going to let it happen where I am. And I think that's where this big clashes with law enforcement is the democratic, liberal, socialistic world. Law enforcement has to be the enemy because they want one unified, state-controlled police force.
Yeah. You're the enemy until they can use you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so we have to be the enemy, and everything they're doing is making us the enemy. They vilified us. They've made us the bad guy in all these arrests and everything else. Doesn't matter what the suspect does. They twist facts. The suspect allegedly shot at the cops and then we murdered him. It's like, oh my gosh, talk about, misinformation.
Right.
And we're just in an environment where things aren't real anymore, and we're being manipulated by people with an agenda.
When you even look at Fox News now, they said, I keep reading these reports. When I was in D.C. and they had clashes between people that were supporting Trump and Antifa coming up fully dressed in outfits, all black with the Antifa flag. And the headline at Fox reads, "Clashes between Trump supporters, critics." They call it Antifa critics of Trump. Yeah. Let me ask you two more questions. I won't keep you all day. Okay, first one is, and we may have kind of covered this, but I really want the people to understand they feel oppressed. Okay, the people feel oppressed. They feel like they can't do anything against these governors, but I believe that they can. I believe that the real power is in the people when the people stand together. You are one sheriff, but you do have authority given to you by the people of Riverside County. Can you just tell the people the reality of the power that they have when they stand together for the good? Because you're standing against these people, and you're proving that they are not, because people get this vision of the government, and they think the government is some kind of mechanized force, but this is not the government. These are dictators, and you're standing against them. I just think the people need to hear that they can do that from somebody who's doing it.
That's absolutely right. And the beauty of all of our elections, no matter where you are, elections happen almost every year. There's some type of an election every year where you can affect change. Certainly every 2 years, there's major elections, and every 4 are presidential elections and governor elections, and the big government entities are every 4. Sometimes senators are 6, but they stagger them. So every 2 years you're voting on something. But usually it's an every year event. What everyone has to realize, and I think that, you always hear about the silent majority. Well, a lot of people have told me, well, I don't vote because my vote doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Well, that apathetic attitude makes it doesn't matter. And if you don't stand up for what you feel is correct, and you don't, if you're afraid to voice your concerns, and if you're afraid to rally around other people and get involved with a movement or start a movement, then you're just as guilty as the person that's trying to do that movement. Right. If you don't stand up for socialism, you're just as guilty as the person that's trying to turn this country socialistic. And I think what gets lost on a lot of people, and I think it's because over the years, we, even in our educational system, we've changed and we've got away from what America really is. And America is the people. America is not the government.
Right.
The government is by the people, for the people,
right,
not the other way around. They work for us. We don't work for them. We're not beholden to them. That's why our country's better than every other country, is because the people control this country, not the government.
Right.
And I know that the vast majority in this country are law-abiding, good, moral people. And all of those people need to stand up for the other ones that aren't. And if you're not going to stand for America, then that means you're against America. And you have to make sure at the voting booth that your voice is heard, and that you go out and make sure that you're putting people in there that believe that America is more important than everyone else. And our country and the government made up by us is more important than everyone else. And I think we've put in too much faith in government. We've gotten away from relying on ourselves. It's easier to blame someone else. It is much easier for someone to blame me for them being in ICU than to say, you know what, for the last 50 years, I've poisoned myself with processed foods. I've never exercised a day in my life. And now I can't figure out why this virus that attacks your lungs and your ability to breathe is now killing me.
Right.
I didn't right. do that. You did that to yourself.
Yeah.
But it's easier to blame someone else. It's easier to say, government, why are you not giving me a pill? Why are you not giving me a shot in the arm? Mm-hmm. Because I certainly don't want to take responsibility on myself and say that I could have changed or could have done something different. Right. And I think as a country, we've got to get back to, when my parents and my grandparents, they lived life a lot differently than my kids do.
Right.
It's unfortunate. And I believe that, like a lot of things, when they say it's got to get worse before it gets better, I think we've hit worse. I think that we're at a point where people are rising up now. People are, and it's not the Antifa. It's not the Seattles and the Portlands. I think those are what's causing the rest of us to say, okay, enough is enough.
Right.
We're not going to, government is not here to help us. You're supposed to be working for us, not against us. And I think we're on the path of going down that road to fixing everything. It unfortunately, it might not be easy.
Yeah. And we may have to go a little bit further down, especially now with the way that the voting system, I think, has been compromised in the way these things have happened. That's a whole nother discussion, which I'd love to have you on here again, because I have a buddy who was, and I've talked about him a lot on this show. He was from Poland, and he was actually held in a gulag for 3 years for having a typewriter under socialist Poland. And then he came to the United States, became an American citizen and a Navy SEAL. And then now he's a computer programmer after 20 years. He was a SEAL and he retired. And he started a thing called Connexing, which is like a Facebook type of website. And I've come on there and helped him. So we're trying to get people over there so that they can I've been blocked on these social media sites, and it is a gut punch because you lose contact with so many people. So I've been telling people, at least go get a second account so you know that those connections won't go away. But so with that being said, the reason I brought that up was that so I started something called the Free Territory Alliance, and I spent the past month drafting this document, and it's a page long, and it reflects on the Declaration of Independence, because I think we're in a similar position now that we were in 1776 and on up until we actually were able to get the Constitution back in the 1780s. So what I see now is that the Third Amendment, actually, which people don't even think about at all, which was quartering in our homes, that the Third Amendment has, in my mind, has suddenly become very important because the government is quartering in our homes. They're actually telling us what we can and cannot do in our own homes. Fauci was saying, which I purposely not said anything about Fauci, but it really went overboard the other day when he said that we shouldn't be seeing our kids or hugging our kids. I don't know exactly what he was talking about over Christmas. A very strange comment. But so I came up with this document, and with a good friend of mine, we created a website. And what I'm trying to get people to do is to go on there, read the document. There's an oath at the bottom because most civilians never get to take the oath. They don't take an oath, and so they don't realize that their citizenship actually means something. Mm-hmm. And the oath is that it says that you'll support and defend the Constitution, that you won't capitulate to any other form of government outside that which is written in the founding documents. They can say the oath, and then they can sign their name to it and put the city, state, and zip code where they live. And in just 4 days, we've gotten over well over 1,000 people. We're approaching 2,000 people that have signed it. And we're taking that data and putting on a map so that people can see that there's other people where they live that feel like they do and that will swear an oath not to capitulate. I actually have a sheriff. I'm not going to say where he is, but I have because he wanted to wait and see how things are going to unfold because in the state that he's in. But he signed it. I've had other politicians consider it, but they don't want to sign an oath or swear an oath. But still, the fact is, it is a visual way for people to see that they're not alone in the way that they feel. There's a visual map that you can see on that site. Also, I'm capturing the emails so that I can send out if something occurs or if there's something coming down, not hearsay, not an anonymous source. If there's things occurring that somebody in the know says this is occurring, I can inform people, right? So that I'm one person. I've done that. Now we've got over 1,000 people, 2,000 people. We've got a Facebook page, Twitter page, Parler page. So we've got all these things going on where people can unify. The question I have for you is what can the people do to support you? Because you're really supporting freedom and the Constitution and defending it against these enemies. What can the people do to support you? And then if you do get a chance, go look at that website. And if you do want to sign that, let me know. And I mean, you can sign it and then and be one of those blue dots on there so everybody realizes that. I mean, they already know that. But if anybody you know wants to go on there and be a part of this so they can show that they will not capitulate, then we'd love to have you and anybody else on there. But what can they do to help support you?
One thing I've found with politicians is they're weak and they're easily led. And even in our area, our politicians, they get our board of supervisors, they get called every Tuesday at their meetings by the same 10, 20 people. They read the same statement that someone prepared for them, and then they get up and they recite the same thing. And they believe that that's the majority, that's the whole. So if people want things to change, all of the good people out there that are listening to this, that are thinking that believe that America is America and we shouldn't be socialist and we shouldn't be going down these roads and that we need to be open up our businesses and taking care of the sick people for sure, but the healthy people should not be punished for that. Anyone that is believing in this, you have to let your voices be heard. You have to take the time to call your assemblymen, your senators, your representatives, your mayors, your city councilmen, your board of supervisors, and you have to tell them, and not only you tell them, you've got to get all of your friends that feel the same way, and they all have to start, you tell 10 people, they tell 10 people, they tell 10 people, and before long, those politicians can't leave their house without hearing from someone, and they get thousands and thousands and thousands of email a day. That's how they make their decisions.
Are these modern day leftists intimidated by that whatsoever?
They are, because I'll tell you why. They only care about their next election. Mm-hmm. They only care about their next election. They are not there for the betterment of the people. I got in this for the betterment of my department to create a better environment for better public safety to my county. I didn't get here to be the sheriff. The sheriff means nothing to me. Being called the sheriff, having a title means absolutely nothing to me. And I'm finding that is some people's identity. They are not sheriff, but the mayor. That's their identity. They have
Right.
nothing else in life other than being the mayor or the notoriety of being a public official where they think they're better than everybody else. And you can see those type of people are attracted to those positions because it feeds on their ego. And
I've
they
seen that.
only
I've
care.
seen that in the bureau. I've seen that in law enforcement. I've seen that in politics and in media. Media is the worst. All these people that basically are the host of these shows giving you their opinions have no experience, but they are the host of the show. And so they truly believe they are smarter than the people they're talking to.
Oh, absolutely. So I have 5 board of supervisors.
Yeah.
All 5 of them believe exactly what I believe. They, in a private conversation, they believe exactly what I believe, but only 2 of them will come out and say it because they're afraid of not getting elected again. And they have to, there's someone going to run against them and they can't make that half. Elections are usually a 60-40 thing, sometimes low 50s to high 40s. So it's a 50, you can win with 50% of the vote, 50.1. And that's how they live their life. They don't want to make that other half mad. And those are the ones that are influenced by the people calling in.
Right.
One thing that I want to tell people out here that were born here. I'm telling you, in the people that I deal with, the best, proudest Americans are ones that immigrated here in their life. You talk to someone that as a child or as a young adult was able to get here from Cuba. Those are the most proud Americans. They will give their life right this second for this country because they know what socialism is.
Yep.
They know what communism is, and they came here because they know the world should not be that. But the Americans who were born here, the privileged that know nothing else, they've been told through school and a re-education that America is bad. But the best, most proudest Americans are immigrants here that absolutely love this country. And if regular Americans that were born here, that had their parents born here, if they would start talking to these other communities, they would see that we're going down the wrong path. And maybe they do need to take a stand, and maybe we do need to turn this around, because there's something very profound in a Cuban American or a Middle Eastern American that is only been here for a certain amount of time, that they are so proud to be Americans in this country.
Venezuelan American. I mean, listen, I'll tell you something, Sheriff. It's interesting that you're saying this, and the last thing we're talking about, especially Cubans, because I have met a lot of Cubans over the past few years. I was working in Miami, and I realized very quickly that the president, I'm a supporter of President Trump, but he messed up because he did not include the Cubans as a major part of his campaign. The Cubans know probably better than anyone else in recent history, because how quickly this can occur, how quickly socialism can take over. And in the Free Territory Alliance, the document that I wrote, this one-page document, this is the first sentence in this document. It says, in the course of human events, history warns whenever an oppressed people rise up and claim their freedom, a repeating cycle of learned helplessness will evolve, wherein as a free citizenry chooses to turn to comfort instead of service, the slow and subversive lie of tyranny will repeatedly rise and subvert the God-given natural laws of freedom. And this happens over and over and over again in history, where people become free, and within a couple of years, they become comfortable. And as soon as they do that, they just give it away to these nefarious people. It's the same persona rises up every single time. And go ahead.
Absolutely. And our founding fathers said that they've given us the greatest country in the world, and their fear was that we wouldn't keep it.
And they were right. I mean, they saw, they saw people, why, and under this king, 240 years ago, they saw people that would say, it's not perfect, but it's, it's good enough. It reminds me of The Matrix, that movie where the guy goes, when I eat, he was in The Matrix. He says, why would I ever want to give this up? When I eat a steak, I can taste the steak and it tastes really good. Why would I want to go to where I can be free when it's not as good as this? Well, obviously they don't know the reality of what true freedom is. Socialists don't realize it, because if you want to have a utopia, the only way to have a utopia is if you have a well-educated, well-policed, well-thought-out nation that is free.
Absolutely.
Not people who go through a conflict and normalization, which it's the weirdest thing that socialists and communists call it, normalization. But listen, I'm not gonna keep you here any longer. I think what you're saying is what so many people feel, but people, like you said, in your position just won't say it. They are afraid to lose their jobs, their pensions, and the words of Pete Van Hoosier, which was my commanding officer at SEAL Team 4, he always said all he ever wanted to be was the commander of a SEAL team. He didn't care if he got any higher. He loved where he was, and he was going to make that team the best he could. And so it made us all very powerful, because we were being led by somebody that his idea of leadership wasn't rank. His idea of leadership was standing with men among men. And I think that's what you're doing. I think and this is the thing that is going to be the make it or break it. You have the chance of being a leader among leaders that stand up and take this country back, or in 5 years, you will just be another person 5 years ago that was talking about what was going to happen.
Right. I realistically have to look at, because I'm a politician and there's an election that I may not be voted in next time. The good thing for this position is the majority of people, especially here in Riverside County, are completely behind me, and they respect me for doing what I'm doing. But my wife said something to me today. There's always, someone's, she'll see something on social media or, in the newspaper, or whatever the case may be. And sometimes we worry, about our future and whether or not I'm going to have a job and, something like that. But she said that she would rather have me unemployed than compromise my morals, my integrity, my principles, and wherever that leads me, as long as I stay true to myself and true to my mission, then so be it. Because she doesn't want me giving in to to confrontation. She doesn't want me giving in to someone not believing in me or not believing in what I'm doing, and then trying to appease them and doing something that I know is not right.
Right.
And I'm glad I have her to keep putting it in those perspectives, because sometimes you can get lost in the minutia. But I'm coming to realize that I didn't do anything. I certainly people say, oh, you only just want your 5 minutes of fame. Trust me, I don't want fame. I want to wake up. This morning, I told my wife, I said, this is the only normal part of my day. I was out shoveling horse shit, cleaning horse stalls, and that is the only normal part of my day. And the rest of it is all of this. Right. I would rather be out there with my horses and my dogs, and life is good. I didn't do this for fame. I didn't do this for notoriety, or I did it because it was the right thing to do. And I'll always stand by that this was the right thing to do. I know it's the right thing to do. And I'm hoping that more people see that as we go on and move on. I mean, I was raised right, I think. I mean, my parents did a good job raising me with morals and ethics. And, my dad never did. He spoke his mind. He was respectful, and that's how he taught us. And you don't do things just because you're told. You do things that are right, and you do things for the right reasons. And I'll always be like that. And I hope that the majority of people are like that, and that people are going to get on board. I'm not going away. I'm still the same person. I'll always be the same person. And I honestly believe that that's why my message was so well received, not only for the message itself, but people that are going back, and I'm seeing it in the other videos that I've done and the other things that have happened in the last 2 years while I've been the sheriff. They know that I'm just a regular person. I'm no better than anybody else. I'm right. No better than them. I just have a different job to do. And I you know where I come from, you know what I believe, and I don't lie to people. I don't sugarcoat things. I'm respectful, I think, in my delivery, and I don't let emotion overrun my vision or my direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that, we had a major sheriff's meeting today via Zoom, and I can tell that in the beginning of this in March, everyone was quiet. There are 58 sheriffs in California. They were all quiet. Right now, there's probably about 45 of them that have had it, and they're not quiet anymore. And I'm hoping that eventually I can get all 58, and we can all be speaking the same language, and we can all be, trying to get that message out to the people that you've got to stand up. You've got to let your voices be heard, and you can't be afraid to do it.
Well, Sheriff, listen, I know you have a computer in front of you because you're the boss. So I want you to look at freeterritoryalliance.com. I think if you look at that and you pass that on to these other sheriffs, if we can promote this, we can get people to sign this, and we'll have the ability to email all these people at the same time. If the sheriffs push that out and we get enough support out there, what we'll be able to do is be a voice for you and a voice for all these sheriffs, and not just a voice, but an organized voice of the people. That is the key to this whole thing. That is what I'm trying to do through this, is give guys like you, men and women that are leaders in these positions, a backing by organized people in your environment, and so that you can see that they're there, and so that they can see that they're also there. So take a look at it. Let me know what you think about it. And then if you want to push that out, if there's anything else I can do to talk to these sheriffs, I know for a fact how important the sheriff is. I'm going to try to educate people on that. But one thing I got to ask you, in Will County, I have some friends that were cops there and were running for some stuff in Illinois. Their sheriff can be fired by the coroner. Have you ever heard of that before? That's the only person that can fire the sheriff in Illinois is the coroner.
Really? There obviously something is that's something
that's a political
yes, in that state constitution that was written in there way back when. The unique thing about that right there is in Riverside County, I'm the coroner also.
There you go.
So I'm the sheriff coroner of our county. So
somebody fix it there.
It's split throughout our state where we have some places have coroner and some places have the sheriffs that are both. But there is no one in California that oversees the sheriff. The coroner is not higher than the sheriff.
I love that. Well, people got to learn. I talked to Sheriff Lamb down in Arizona. I don't know if you've ever met him before. There's several sheriffs here in New York, and everywhere I go where it's oppressive, although Arizona is not oppressive, it's starting to become oppressed now because the liberals have flooded there and they're trying to change it there. But the one thing that I've seen throughout this country is, and there's bad sheriffs too, but by and large, the one group of people that I think are still capable of standing against tyranny are the sheriffs. And that is, you have this funnel of oppression and tyranny, and the stopping point is going to be the sheriffs.
Unfortunately, I think not unfortunately, you are exactly right. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately for us sheriffs right now, whether we believed it or not, or thought it would ever happen, I think that we're almost to that point.
Yep, I do too. Listen, Sheriff Chad Bianco, that's how you say your last name, right? Am I saying that right, Bianco?
Yes.
I am notorious because I'm from Arkansas. We butcher names, so I always want to make sure that I get that right. I can't thank you enough. And the reason I brought up Drago a minute ago is because I interviewed him for my podcast last January, and we were talking about what could happen if socialism got a hold, and this was before the COVID stuff. And I just interviewed him last month, and the whole interview, we were like rubbing our heads like, we can't believe that everything we talked about has occurred in 9 months. And he's freaked out.
It's
totally
crazy.
So if anything happens or whatever, I'd love to, or just if you want to say anything, or if I get a chance to talk to you again, I'd love to, because you're doing God's work and people see it. It's not just a clickbait thing. This is the real thing. And this is the actual war that's happening here. So I can't thank you enough for being on the front line, and your deputies as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate you reaching out and letting me talk to you here. I really do. Keep doing what you're doing, and I thank you.
You got it, brother. Thank you very much. God bless you, and be safe. And if I don't talk to you for Christmas, have a Merry Christmas.
Same to you.
All right. God bless. So there you go, folks. What an incredible interview, and with Sheriff Chad Bianco. He is the sheriff, coroner, and public administrator of Riverside County and in California. And just that is what leadership is all about. That is what being in touch when you swear an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's about being in touch with what you're actually saying when you say the oath. You know, I've said this numerous times. When I watch the congressmen and women swear in, and it's very similar to when somebody swears in and swears an oath to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God, when they go up and they're going to be a witness. And those people aren't saying the oath. When I saw Nancy Pelosi get sworn in, she didn't say the oath. The Master at Arms said the oath, and Nancy Pelosi said, I do. That's it. And I don't agree with that. When you take an oath, you should say the oath. And this sheriff shows the perfect example of somebody who knows what they're doing when they take the oath. And so this is, I think this is a very important interview. I think the conversation was very important, and being able to see somebody or hear from somebody who actually is in a position of authority and that actually understands, free from politics, what the threat is to this country. And they feel like you do. You're not crazy. What you're seeing is real. That what these people are doing, what these politicians are doing, it's real. And it's just very important that we hear from people like Sheriff Bianco. You know, when I interview individuals like Sheriff Chad Bianco from Riverside County, and they show the example for the rest of the people that they understand the oath that they took. They understand what it stands for and what it means when you swear an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's why I created the Free Territory Alliance and the oath that you can take yourself. Listen, it's not a joke. This is serious business, and you can see what happens in this country, at least, when people don't take it seriously. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. Peace, and we're out of here.